So, friends, this session we like to call our Public Sector Tech Talk. And this is sort of a series that we do with digital leaders across public sector to sort of understand them better as people, to understand what drives them, what motivates them, what gets them up in the morning, what might keep them up at night. And so we can be, better partners to them, because I know, our government isn't necessarily looking for suppliers. They want partners, right? You want people that are going to help you on your journey to reach your goal, to sort of, achieve the outcomes that we all want. So we want to understand Rob Thompson a little bit better. Here we go.
Okay.
So my first question for you then is, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Definitely not looking at a picture of myself on a monitor down here where I'm doing this, looking like some evil wizard. That's a difficult question. I kind of wanted to be everything all at the same time. Two notable things. I did want to be a pilot in the military. I wanted to fly jets, but my eyesight meant that a lack of 20/20 vision meant that was off the table, and that was particularly disappointing for me because I felt like I had the aptitude to do that. I'm not quite sure about the morals of doing it, by the way, but at the age of 10, it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah.
I then got morbidly fascinated with watching Quincy. For those of you that know who he is, he was a pathologist, wasn't he? And I wanted to be a forensic scientist and pathologist until I realised it involved cutting up dead people. And but that set me on a track where I'd pick 3 sciences. I was already good at maths, but I actually found that my hotspot was physics and maths, that kind of combination. My mother bought me a VIC-20. That was it. I was right.
What's a VIC-20?
It was a very, very old home computer,
Okay.
1980s stuff, 3.5K of memory. Whoa. 6502 processor. I was writing stuff in assembler by the time I was 14. Myself and my friend Edmund, who went off to do maths at Cambridge, he had a BBC B. We would sit there and program. And then I kind of got into engineering. I went and did engineering at university. So
That sounds really exciting. Like, I think physics was like my arch nemesis. We never got along, me and physics. So that's really impressive. So how did you go from not a pilot and not a Quincy to getting to your position at the Home Office now?
So if you'd have predicted that I was going to end up here, I'd have laughed at you. There was absolutely nowhere in my thinking I was going to end up as a CDIO of a major government department at any point up until about 2014. When I finished my degree, I nearly went off to do it. In fact, I got a PhD place to mess around with lasers and electro-optics and stuff like that. I nearly ended up as a real scientist with a lab coat and pens and stuff like that. But I was skint. I was absolutely skint because I'd had far too much fun at university, and I had like this overdraft that was the size of Wembley. And I just said, I said to my tutor at the time, listen, if I just go off for a year and defer and just restack some money back in the account, I'll see you next year. And I've came back.
Right.
So I ended up getting a job at BT. My background is mainly telecommunications, mobile. I kind of like moved in that universe from the early 90s through to the early noughties, really. I then set up my own software company. I built that. I sold that in 2004. And then I had this really big existential crisis at the age of 34, where I just thought, I don't know what I am, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know why I'm here, because I'd kind of just built and run my own company. And so I ended up going into project management.
I thought you were going to buy a sports car or something.
No. I did buy a boat. But that's just like throwing money in the water. Right. So I got rid of that very, very quickly. The project management job was at Deutsche Telekom, or T-Mobile International as it was known then, in 2003. And what I managed to do is get on the kind of like the cusp of the build of the mobile internet, or the internet as we now just know it. And it was really, really exciting stuff. And it took me back to my roots of basically building again, like software development, doing all the things I was doing at 14, 15, messing around with computers, except on a pan-European scale. And what they recognised, that I wasn't just an ordinary project manager, and then they elevated me quite quickly to a senior management post. So I kind of did that till about 2014. I worked in Germany for a couple of years for Deutsche. My wife said, very happy that you're having a good career, but we live in the UK. Are you coming home? I said yes, knowing really what that meant, which was like, get home quick. And I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And I bumped into an old colleague who was at DWP at the time, and he was on the Universal Credit Reset, and he said, do you want to come and have a look at this? This is rebuilding the working age welfare state. And I just went, what does that even mean? And he said, well, why don't you come and do it? And that's it.
Right.
So I ended up building Universal Credit as you know it now. And once I'd kind of finished the main thrust of that transformation work, I then went to the Home Office as their CTO. I was their CTO for 6 years, and I became the CDIO this year. So I've kind of like had a fairly random career.
No, it sounds exciting, and it feels like you were always led by your passion for what you do, which is very exciting, and actually kind of living the dream in some ways, because people always want to be like, passionate about what they're doing and driven by that. So now, as CDIO at the Home Office, what do you think your top priorities are?
Oh my God. The landscape's really changed in the last year. I think we've gone from a situation where we had a lot of money to be able to do digital transformation, and actually fix quite a lot of the basics too. And we've gone into a situation now where there's definitely less money around. And so there's some really, really hard choices that we're wrestling with. We've got transformation of our migration and border system, which I would say is probably 3/4 done. But that last quarter is really important to finish. And so there's a lot of effort going into making sure that we can finish that off. I think similarly, in the policing space, the replacement of many of the legacy systems and that transformation is about 50% of the way through. That's still got quite a way to go. So my top priority is making sure that those transformations finish. And it's really critical that they do, because not only does that eradicate the bulk of my technical debt and my legacy, and gets rid of some really nasty legacy systems, like the Police National Computer, which is 51 years old. It's 51 years old. It's slightly younger than me. It's like it's a marvel that it's still working. Yeah. But we need that infrastructure. We need those modern platforms to be able to then start to deploy machine learning and AI more broadly to basically optimize quite a lot of what we do. And what I mean by that is the use of machine learning and AI specifically to speed up decision support and decision making, and to basically add a little bit of level of smart into the things that we do. So instead of sort of using deterministic methods to make decisions, clearly machine learning offers you far more sophisticated ways of doing that. We've got evolution in the technology around reasoning and chain of thought, and the ability to demonstrate thinking, which supports the ability to demonstrate whether decisions are being made sensibly or not. And I think that the emergence of that is going to unlock a huge amount of value in government. But like I said, I've got to finish some of the jobs off before we actually start to introduce that.
That's exciting. It kind of feels like the foundation has to get right first, and then you guys will build something really.
It's a bit more than foundation. I'd say the majority of the foundation is there. You know, I think Home Office is, outside of the MOD, the biggest IT entity in government. It's bigger than DWP for sure. It's bigger than HMRC for sure. I know that. If you look at the services that we've built and the number of people that we touch, it's over 200 million people a year. So, you know, how many of you have been through an e-gate recently? It's pretty good, isn't it? Say thanks. So no, but there's quite a lot of effort that goes into doing that, but it's actually, people don't think about it. I assume many of you have renewed your passports at some point recently. Isn't that a world-class service? It really is. There's that. You won't have experienced this, but the ETA service, so the Electronic Travel Authorisation.
I have experienced that one. Yeah, it's great.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, bang on there from Maztec. Maztec built that. So they, you know, at full flight, we're basically approving 1 a second every single second of the year. That's 30 million. It's entirely automated. 98% of decisions don't touch a human, and it's a really sophisticated process in the background that does it. So, but that's what you get when you build digital services and the policy is thought of within the context of a digital service. Where it gets a bit more tricky is things like e-visas, where you're having to codify and build digital services in and around, you know, 30, 40 years of different policies from different governments under different sort of like conditions over time. It becomes very, very tricky to do that. So I think it's a bit of a marvel, really, that we have such a broad reach. And I'm forgetting here, you know, births, marriages and deaths. That's us as well.
Oh, yeah?
The General Registry Office is Home Office as well. We've got a transformation programme in flight for that at the moment called CREST. And you will probably start to see that, the early incarnations of those public services coming to life very, very shortly, although we anticipate that that will take another few years too. So, you know, when you're touching the lives of like 100, 200 million people a year, that's not like getting the basics right. Yeah. That's like, we've already got many of the basics right. Yeah. We've already got world-class digital services. Amazing. We're already pretty good at this. This, for me, is about taking it to kind of like the challenger bank level, like Monzo, or really high-end, sophisticated decision. I'd say we're about as good as banking. I think, generally speaking, we're probably a bit more sophisticated with banking. Banking's got the same legacy system problems, but... So where I want to take us as an organisation is into that, actually, how can we be really contemporary? How can we be really excellent in the use of digital? And how can we codify policy development and operational service delivery more tightly as we build these services?
That sounds really great. We have quite a few. I have one more question. I have a couple more questions, but I really will only ask one more, and then it's over to you guys to ask your questions, under the condition that you also have to say what you wanted to be when you were little. So before you can ask your question, you have to say, I wanted to be a firefighter / ballerina, or whatever, fill in the blank. My question, before we get to that, so what are the main challenges now that you have before that's sort of standing in the way? Or is it easy peasy? That's also an answer too.
No, it's not. It's never easy, is it? We do a lot of things that are already world leading. Okay. So if you talk to colleagues at Amazon, we know that we're definitely one of their biggest customers in Europe. We know that the sophistication levels that we're operating at with many of the things that we're doing around infrastructure are way beyond what private sector and is up to, we kind of know that in many regards we're ahead of the game compared to the private sector. This notion that the private sector is better than the public sector, it's nonsense. I worked in both. You know, I did a big stint in the private sector and I've done a stint in government. And for me, what we're doing at the Home Office is generally, as an average, far ahead of the private sector. I think there are outliers where excellence are really deemed, but you know, if I go on Amazon now, I buy some weed killer, its recommendation engine's going, do you want some more weed killer? That's not sophistication, is it? That's a recommendation engine that doesn't work. So it's hard to know how you get from this position of being really ahead of the game to being even further ahead of the game. So I have to spend time talking to like the folks at Octopus Energy, who, like Greg and his team there, who've been very, you know, in terms of the energy industry, they've disrupted it.
Right.
But they've got their Kraken platform, which they use underneath there to do that. That's a really interesting concept around a kind of like a platform that serves an entire service base and the level of integration. That's exciting to know. I really enjoyed the Monzo customer experience banking with them. Yeah. And I just think, so I kind of have to take where the really leading digital businesses in the UK, Europe and the world are as the signpost for where we should be going next. I don't think, and I'm kind of reliant upon the industry more broadly to be connected into that, to give me insights around that. But quite often, those people who are really ahead of the game, they're generally doing it themselves. So it's hard. Yeah. It's quite hard to know where to get this stuff from. Yeah. That's my biggest challenge.
This is really exciting because it feels like you want to be a challenger government department, which is like very exciting. It feels like very, you know, fresh and different and leading.
Yeah. I just want to be better than we are now.
Amazing.
Yeah, that is my motivation, to take us to a place from where we are now, which is good, to a place which is like way better.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Anybody have any questions? Oh, look, loads of questions. And I have one of the mics, which means there's only really, Fran has a mic here, but we have like 3 questions there. 4. Oh, great.
Hello. Can you hear me? I wanted to be a jockey.
You wanted to be a jockey?
Yeah. Like racing horses?
Racing horses. Wrong way, wrong size. Wasn't going to happen. You want to be at the forefront and changing and doing things really well, and you obviously are. How are you bringing other people along with you? How are you doing that collaboration piece that we've talked about today being so essential to
I'm sorry, I haven't been here all day. I've been at work all day.
Okay. So we've talked a lot today about not being individual fiefdoms and collective transformation and how that's going to take a lot of change. And you're talking really highly about some of the work you've done. How are you going to take other government departments along with you? How do you talk about it? How do you get people doing similar?
So there is it's like an onion. So Helen, who runs DWP Digital, Daljit, who runs HMRC Digital, and myself, we're connected, okay? We are quite well connected with each other. We talk to each other a lot. We kind of understand where each other's are. I know Daljit's permanent secretary quite well. I used to work with him on Universal Credit. You know, I know Peter from time at DWP. You see what I mean? It's kind of like, so there is a connection already established between the big operational government departments where we share and talk about how we can help one another. It's harder when it gets, you're right, when it gets into the reality of trying to do that. It's easy for individual departments to get lost in the backdrop of their own noise, their own local issues, and their own level of maturity, frankly. So what we find is we can share more readily and easily with the big operational departments because we are kind of roughly in the same place. And then everybody else who's probably behind in terms of level of sophistication, there's a different dynamic where we work with DCIT and GDS, or CDDO as previously was, and we give our learnings to them, and then they propagate that in. So it's not a perfect system, but people like David Knott, who's the Chief Technology Officer of Government, David and I talk to each other a lot of the strategic themes that come up with, they're shared equities for us, you know. It's kind of like we know what the problems are, and we know what good would look like. The trick is getting people to kind of like engage with and, I guess, connect with doing something about it. And that's not something we can necessarily always control. So we try, but it's not a perfect system, and it's probably the best that we can do for now.
Thank you. I think, yeah, Fiona, and then this gentleman here.
Thank you. Fiona Christie from Sopra Steria was desperate to be in a girl band, so if there are any talent scouts in the room, come and talk to me later.
Hey, I play the keys. You're going to be great.
Brilliant. We could maybe do a live jam later. But my question, Rob, it was great to hear your enthusiasm, and obviously great as well to get the round of applause in the room of how great the department is doing. I suppose just working closely with the Home Office, I suppose you talked about those legacy systems that are sort of 50% or 75% complete in their transformation. They've still got more to do, and that last bit isn't necessarily the easy bit. Coupled with that, you've got the challenge of the spotlight on all the challenges in the Home Office at the minute. You know, you've got a new Secretary of State. I suppose I'm just thinking about the ambition to be the exemplar department, to push boundaries, to do things better. The other tech transformation you've got coming down the track, whether that's police shared services, or you talked about the National Policing Computer, for example. So I'm just wondering, how are you going to balance fixing those transformations that are already in flight alongside what's coming down the track at the same time as the urgency and the political pressure on your department?
That's kind of my day job. So being a CDIO is the answer to that question. So it's inherently my role to balance that, isn't it? That's where the buck stops. Ultimately, I've got to decide how much effort that I can put into transformation or continue the transformation. Decommissioning of old systems and legacy and transformation, they are synonymous. They are two sides of the same coin. The transformation helps me get rid of the legacy. So by basically driving the transformation, I actually eradicate the legacy. There are other elements of technical debt that are kind of around the peripheries, but I have discretionary spend to be able to deal with that separately. When it comes to where, you know, I guess your question is the political balance. So I think to some extent, we're independent of what the Home Sec wants. The Home Sec will want to do what the Home Sec wants to do, and it's our job to ensure that that is delivered. What I am very, very conscious of is that Antonia, as our Perm Sec, is particularly keen on us becoming the leading government department for digital. So if any of you have met Antonia, she's a force of nature. And do you know what? That suits me down to the ground, because I've got the PermSec cover from her, and I've got the second PermSec cover from Simon to go and do these things. So I don't feel like I've got an issue in being able to balance these things. I think what I've got to do is get the proportions of the mix right. And I think I've got that about right at the moment.
Rob, thanks for your talk. My name's Tim. I'm an account manager at Fortinet, with whom the Home Office does quite a lot of work. And mindful of everybody...
Tell me what you've forgotten your...
Sorry. I wanted to be a fighter pilot in the RAF, much like yourself. A goal that I didn't achieve, though my younger brother did, which is phenomenally annoying. So I'm the disappointment child. So mindful of the fact that a lot of bang for buck is delivered by looking out at 5 and 10 years, how do you anticipate solving the problem of electoral cycles and changing of priorities, not least strategically, but also with budgets, which, as we know, even year to year can sometimes change massively?
So there's definitely going to be less money around. We know that. I think you all know that, don't you? I told many of you at the techUK event that we ran with suppliers it was a couple of months ago, wasn't
July,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, it was quite clear that there's less money on the table to do work, and we will be expecting you to do more for less. So I'm just making that very, very clear. If you keep trying to we're not going to trade with you. We actually want really good value for money from you, and we also want you to deliver on your promises. And that's a really, really important part of it. If you commit to doing something, that means you're committed to it, not you're committed to it except if. So I think I've got to find ways of basically doing the same workload for less amount of budget. And I think there are two ways of doing that. The first one is around bringing in more civil servants rather than using the supplier market. I've already got a plan in place for doing that. It's not a binary choice, by the way. So it's not like we use everybody and we don't have any civil servants and we're going to have all of them civil servants. It's about changing that bias, and just moving that bias by a little bit actually does save us quite a bit of money. So that's one contributing area. The other area, unfortunately for you, is that it's back to my point about we're going to be asking you to do more for less. And it is as simple as that.
Oh, I think we have time for one last question, and oh gosh, Fran, you decide, because I'm looking at people right in their eye and I feel like the pressure. So Fran, whoever you want, go for it. Give the mic to somebody, Fran, who has their hand up maybe. No one's got their hand up now. People, this is the last question.
Is that because I said I'm asking you to do more for less? Is that what it was?
Yeah, right here. Yeah,
is that in just one question? Is it one or two?
Well, we'll see.
Okay,
We'll
all
see.
right.
Hi, I'm Gita Willis from Transform. I wanted to be on stage as well, West End musical.
Ooh.
Okay, that's me. But so we should form a band.
So we've got a couple of pilots, a jockey, and a couple of stars, really.
So my question was really about what you were talking about in terms of the next phase of transformation, and you're talking about codifying policy. And I just wanted to get a bit more insight into what you think that means, what it looks like, and how you're going about trying to get that.
Well, I can tell you what it looks like because we did it with ETAs. So we had the director for policy for that area, she's called Philippa, brilliant, exceptional, love working with her. She recognised that there was this we're in a situation where we knew that we had to deliver ETAs. We knew that operationally you just couldn't hire a load more caseworkers in to do it. We knew that there was a political appetite to do it at the time, but there was no baggage. It was a greenfield problem, yeah? So by basically designing the policy at the same time as working through the digital service and designing the service at the same time as working with operations, we were able to come up with a proper business design for ETAs. And that meant that we could put in place the levers, the legislation to be able to do that at the same time as building the service, at the same time as preparing for the 2% of people who actually need a human to make the decision as well, which Mark, who runs that part of the operation, sorted out. So for me, that's what good looks like. At the very, very beginning of the process, your policy, your operational and your digital team are all thinking about what the problem is, what the outcome is, and how to design and deliver it. That's what great looks like. I think if you want to apply that to new policy, you can do that again and again and again. Where it gets difficult is when you've got digital transformation, where you've got layers and layers and layers of policy. I think you've got two choices there. You either have to accept that it's going to be a relatively complicated and probably quite expensive endeavour to do as you deal with all the cases going back 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, or you have an opportunity to re-legislate and go through that process. That's a function of basically whether the legislative agenda is packed full or not. It depends on how much of it is primary, how much is secondary, but there is options to be able to do things in that space. I think it's about having the conversation in the first place. It's a short answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. We actually have time for one more surprise, so there we go.
Lovely. Ezra from Stellarman. You were saying about...
Oh, but Ezra, you know the rules.
You know
What
the
do you
rules.
wanna
What did you
be?
want to do?
I think I wanted to be an artist when I was little.
Oh.
Yeah, unfortunately my drawing didn't improve. It stayed childlike forever. But my question, you were talking about the sort of Monzo Challenger style approach to government. And I suppose I'm just really curious to see, you know, if I was in your shoes, what's the art of the possible in terms of that citizen experience? You know, what's your hopes and dreams of what that could look like?
How many of you have got Monzo accounts? Kind of like that, yeah? Where actually you can do the majority of your transactions very, very painlessly, seamlessly through an app or through web page, depends on what's most appropriate for it, really. I think if you're like me, I had a chargeback situation that I had to go through with Monzo. They were very good, so I know that the backing that off to caseworkers in the background to be able to deal with things was a particularly good experience. And getting that right, I think, was as important as the core digital service. I kind of feel like if we can get to that space, I know Agentic AI, and everybody's going like, let's come to this conference on Agentic, you know, that type of stuff. But ultimately, that type of approach where you've got machine learning, AI type tech, being able to plausibly impersonate and question like a human, actually probably better than a human. Humans are generally quite bad at decision making. It's stochastic in nature, even though we fool ourselves into thinking it's consistent, which is why machines are much better at it in the long run. I think that has got to be the way to go. That actually we use some of the really, really great tech that's emergent at the moment that impersonates human reasoning as the front end to be able to go and do more complex things. That's what I think the future looks like.
Great, guys. We are nearly at time. You guys have been great. Rob's been fantastic. I guess the last question is, what did I want to be when I was little?
Yeah, you didn't tell me.
No, we on our prep call, Rob guessed pop star, which is like, if I was smart enough when I was little, that would have been great. But I didn't even think of that when I was little. Because you know why? I never thought of working when I was little. I did not dream of labor. But ideal job for me, game show host. You can see it, right? I love a bit of trivia, a bit of like, and the answer is, a bit of after the break, all of that stuff. That'd be great. Anyways, thank you so much, Rob.
Pleasure.
I think this has been a really fantastic conversation. And I'm going to hand it over to Matt, who's closing us out today. So thanks, guys.
Right. Thank you.